America's energy industry has been revolutionized by the shale gas boom over the past half-decade, and soon the economy will be, too. The country is on the verge of energy independence. Jack Gerard is the oil and gas industry's top lobbyist. He runs the American Petroleum Institute. Today, he's presenting an outlook for the industry for the next decade, and he's with us from the Newseum in Washington. Jack, it's very good to see you. You have put together, as part of the case that you're making, a report on the state of American oil and gas, including the API's policy priorities. There's a lot that you want the government to do. What's at the top of your list?
Well, Eric, I think it's a combination, a lot of what the government needs to do, but a lot of what the government shouldn't be doing, and that is to interfere or distort markets. What we see today is an unprecedented opportunity for the United States to not only become a major player, but to become the energy superpower in the world. And while doing so, creating jobs, bringing hundreds, indeed millions of people to work with high-paying jobs that pay about 7 times what the minimum wage is, going back to your earlier story about the debate in the Senate today. So in this comprehensive effort, we need to think differently about energy in this country. We are now the world's #1 natural gas producer. We have the opportunity in the next half a dozen years to pass Saudi Arabia as the world's #1 oil producer. This is a big deal, a great opportunity at a time we need it most to restore our domestic economy and put our people back to work.
I'm going to cite 5 things that you have identified in this report that you want, Jack. Among them, opening up federal lands and waters, to drilling, ending the crude oil ban, the ban on crude oil exports, speeding up liquid natural gas terminal approvals, allowing construction of the Keystone XL pipeline, removing some restrictions on refinery construction. Among those things, what's the most important in the short run?
Well, if you look at it in the short run, Eric, the one key factor that's been talked about for way too long is the Keystone XL pipeline. It's now been under review for over 5 years. That's longer than it took us to prevail in World War II, almost as long as it took us to build the Transcontinental Railroad 155 years ago. The President can approve the pipeline with one single word, the word yes. It will put thousands of Americans to work. It will bring energy from the North Dakota, Montana regions, the Bakken Formation as it's called, down to the Gulf Coast to be refined and there to be produced for the benefit of all consumers.
Jack, America is already on track to becoming energy self-sufficient. Why are you making the case for more oil and gas production if we're already going to get there?
Well, it's unclear if we will get there because the greatest concern and consideration for us is the intervention of governmental policy. When you look at what's happening today, this renaissance, this resurgence, this great outbreak, if you will, of energy production has occurred primarily on private and state lands beyond governmental reach. Unfortunately, we have huge assets and resources on federal lands in the Outer Continental Shelf. Today, off the coast of the United States, 87% of it is still off limits. The question for us is, do we have the vision and future ability to see those opportunities and to allow for their development? If we do, not only will we become energy self-sufficient as a nation, we will be able to further improve our trade imbalance. Today, oil and natural gas is the #1 export sector that has closed our trade imbalance by 16% in just the last year. This is a big deal, but it requires government to implement policies that allow the free markets to work. Today, we're restricted from exporting crude oil. Today, we're not allowed into many areas where these vast resources occur. With those openings, as we protect the safety of our workers and protect our environment, we can indeed become the superpower of the world in energy production and change the geopolitical dynamic as it's understood
Jack,
today.
Why do you have so little faith in the ability of American oil and gas companies to generate more production of their own accord? With a ban on crude oil exports in place, with a ban on drilling on federal lands and waters, we are where we are today. The shale gas revolution has a lot to do with the innovative capacity of American oil and gas producers and explorers. If one could make the case that they wouldn't have been incentivized to go and find all that gas and oil in the shale deposits if it had been easier to go and drill on federal lands and waters.
Well, Eric, let me give you one example, and I couldn't agree more with you. It's the direct result of the innovation, the entrepreneurship of the oil and gas industry and technological developments that have brought us to this point today. But let's look at one of the governmental policies. Today, there are numerous requests for permits to export natural gas. Many of those are being held up at the Department of Energy. If those are approved, you will see more natural gas produced in the United States. Why? Because there's a market for it. We have many in Europe clamoring, saying, send us your natural gas. It will help wean us off our reliance on Russian gas today. It will put downward pressure on global prices. Those are all opportunity, but it's being restricted by governmental policy.
Well, that's true.
That's the difference, and that's important.
Jack, I'm interrupting because I want to get this in before we go.
Go ahead.
There are those who would argue that the ban or the restrictions on exports of crude oil, or in this case, gas, are appropriate because they want natural gas prices to be low. People talk about a revolution in the American economy that's going to be fueled by cheap gas. If we open up, but they would say that if we open up the floodgates to gas exports, U.S. domestic gas prices are going to rise, and that's going to inhibit the ability of American manufacturing and industry to take advantage of that plentiful gas supply.
Quite the contrary, Eric, and let me tell you why. Study after study has shown there will be minimal impact at all on price, but most importantly, that gas production is looking for a market. What you're doing by restricting exports is you're limiting the marketplace. You're discouraging the economic development and production of that gas resource right here in this country. By allowing those markets to find their own equilibrium, to find that balance in space, you will enhance the economic activity, indeed the production of natural gas and oil right here in the United States. It puts downward pressure on prices not only domestically, but globally in the areas where crude oil is traded, for example, where that price is set on a global scale. The more supply we put into that market, the better off we are as consumers and as a nation with our job creation potential.
Jack, I want to thank you for joining us here on Market Makers today. That is Jack Gerard of the American Petroleum Institute. He is the chief lobbyist for the U.S. oil and gas industry. Steph?